Hey guys, in this video we're going to go over more conceptual stuff. So we're going to go over more polygon modeling and some tools you guys could use. And then I think moving forward from the class, we'll kind of work it this way where I'll show you guys some concepts and you guys could take those and apply them to modeling your droid. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing I want to show is how to get kind of a harder edge on a smooth polygon surface. So if I go to create polygon primitives and go to cube, get our cube there, and then if I were to smooth this right now, so let's go to mesh and then smooth, we get more of like a sphere shape. But if I keep smoothing it, if I hit the G key and just keep repeating the last move by hitting G, it turns into a sphere basically, because it's taking that, not a perfect sphere, but it's taking that cube and just kind of smoothing it out at the same time it's adding detail to it. So I'm going to undo that, hit Z a couple times. So if we wanted to kind of maintain this cube shape, it gets some like little radii, whatever you want to call them, on the edges. The way we could do that is by inserting some edge loops close to the edge, so that when they do subdivide and smooth, it's only rounding out a small little portion instead of rounding out this like big shape. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select my cube and I'm going to go to mesh tools and insert edge loop. So the way this works is you have to click on an edge. I can't just click in the middle. So if I click on this vertical edge here and hold my mouse down, it allows me to drag, and I see like this preview of where that edge loop is going to go. And once I'm happy with where it is, I can let go of my mouse. That's my left button. So let me undo that. Let me re-explain that for a second there. Go back to object mode. So if I select my cube and then go to mesh tools, insert edge loop, what I want to do is I want to left click on one of these edges. So now I'll click on a different edge. If I click on this edge here, hold my mouse, my left button down, and drag my mouse back and forth, I can see a preview where that's going to end up. And when I'm happy with that, I want it pretty close to this edge, I let go. And then it places a loop of edges right there. And I'll just keep doing the same thing. I'm currently still on the insert edge loop tool. So if I click and hold down on this edge with my left mouse button, and then let's go right click, go back to object mode, and I'm going to hit Q to get my arrow tool. You can see it switched right there. Now I select my cube. Now I see I have some construction history here. We have where we created the polycube, and that when you insert the edge loop, it calls it a poly split ring. So we did that twice, and Maya keeps a record of what we did. And if I do go up to mesh and then go to smooth, you can see we're starting to get some different results now than just that sphere that we had. And if I hit G to repeat that and kind of click off, you can see where over here where we didn't insert any edges, we get that rounded shape. But where we did insert those edges, we get like this nice little radius shape, and it gives you like that more tactile feel, like this is a real object. It doesn't just have this razor's edge of edge right there. So let me undo those couple of mesh smooths by hitting Z. And real quick, let's just go and add a few more edge loops to this shape. So let's do mesh tools, insert edge loop, and I'm going to click on this vertical edge here and drop in a loop right there. And I'm going to click on this edge right here, drop in one right there. So we can kind of do the whole box. Drop one in right here, and we need one right here, and I'm just kind of eyeballing where I put these. So now we have every edge on this cube has some extra edge loops around it to support it when it gets mesh smooth. And you can see in the construction history, we have all these extra poly split rings that we put in there. So I'm going to right click, go back to object mode, grab either my move tool or the arrow tool to select my cube, and then go to mesh and then go to smooth. So now we have this nice, and if I hit select it and hit G one more time to kind of subdivide it again, we got this nice cube shape that could pass as like more like a real object in the real world, because it has a little bit of a radius on this edge. So let's talk about making some custom shapes and applying these concepts to them. All right, so let's just delete this guy. Let's say I want to make like a robot pincher shape, hand, something, you know. The chopper droid has like some robot arms. So let's look at another tool that I like to use, which is the create polygon tool. And I always forget where it is, but it's under the mesh tools. So you go to create polygon, and this allows you to click out a random shape. So we get this little crosshair tool, so we could click and it just starts to make a new polygon for us. And if I click kind of over here, and then to complete the shape, I'm going to just kind of click, actually I think we just hit enter. And let's see here. So we got this shape. It's black. It's every polygon has two sides. Right now it thinks that the outer side is kind of facing the ground, facing the bottom. So if I look at it from the other side, it's black, but that's fine. And then what we want to do is, if I go to wireframe, if I hit 4, I want to connect this vertex to this vertex to make two separate polygons, because typically in 3D you want every polygon to have either 3 or 4 sides to it. When you get a polygon that has like this has 6 sides, that's not typically good. So we could connect this, and the way we do that is, again, under mesh tools, we're going to go to multi-cut. And we get this little X-Acto knife looking thing, and what you do is you click on you put your mouse over a point and it turns red, and you click it, and then you go to the other point you want to click, and then click that, and it creates that edge right there, and you hit enter. And I'll go over this one more time just so you can see that process again. So now we have this kind of custom shape that we made from scratch. And then the next step I would do from here would be, if I go back to shaded mode, I would right click and go to object mode, make sure it's selected, and then go to mesh, and then edit mesh and extrude. And then we could actually push that up. So the surface direction, there's something called surface normals, which describes which is the outside of a surface and which is the inside. So because the top of that was black and I pushed it up, the whole thing is kind of black. But if I pull this down, we can see that it was like inside out. Now it's right side out. So now it's gray and it looks appropriate. So let me just kind of run through that one more time and hopefully make sure I don't miss any steps. I'm just going to go to object mode and delete this shape. So to kind of make a custom shape like that, we're going to go to, let's see here, mesh tools, create polygon, and I want to create like half of that pincher hand thing. So I'm going to kind of just roughly click out some points, and again, you could adjust these after, so it doesn't matter how precise you make this. So click, 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 and then kind of come over. I'm just doing it a different way a little bit now, and then click that last point, and it shows the rough shape of the polygon. Then when you're happy with that, you hit enter. And before we extrude this, we want to make sure, and it's interesting now that I did it and when I clicked it out in that order, now the bottom is black and the top is gray. So it's interesting how Maya interprets how the order in which we click and make these things. So we want to join this point with an edge, because we don't want to have a 6-sided polygon. So I could leave it in shaded mode since I could kind of see what's going on. I'll go to Mesh Tools, Multi-Cut, and I'm not clicking on anything just yet, but if I put my mouse over this point, you can see it turns red. Once it turns red, you can click it with your left mouse button, and then you put your mouse over this point and it turns red. Once that turns red, you can click it, and then you hit enter to complete the action. Now we have a new edge there. Now I can right click and go to object mode, and then grab my either the arrow tool or the move tool. So I'll hit Q or W. I'll just hit W to get the move tool. And then you can see in the construction history we have poly create face. That's when we clicked out the shape, and then we have poly split, and that's when we split that polygon to make this edge here. So now we want to extrude this. So again, make sure you right click, you're in object mode, and have like your move tool or something, and you have that selected. So then we go to mesh. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place with these. Edit mesh, extrude. And this time, because when we're looking at this, it was gray to begin with, we could just pull it up. If we push it down, it'll be black. So you want to pull it in the direction that makes it gray. Cool, so we have that shape. So how do we get this to be like a final piece of geometry? Because right now, if I right click and go to object mode, if I smooth this, if I go to mesh smooth, we get this like, I don't know, like a banana shape or something, right? We don't want that as part of our model, so I'm going to undo that. So we need to add those edges just like we did on that box. So we're going to go to Mesh Tools. Again, we're going to go to Multi-Cut, and I'm going to click on, sorry, not Multi-Cut. We're going to go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. I apologize. And we want to click on an edge that we want to, that runs perpendicular to the edge we want to insert. So I'll click on this vertical edge here, click and drag, and we get this little preview. So we'll throw an edge there. I'll do it again here. Maybe I'll do one here, do one here. So we want to support all the detail that we want to keep when we mesh smooth. Maybe I'll throw one here and throw one here. And let's do one here and here. So kind of outlining every edge on this thing with an extra edge, basically, on either side. So now when I right click and go back to object mode, hit W to get my move tool and select this thing, and then go to mesh and then go to smooth. We get G to do that another time, and now we got this nice hard surface. It's a model, but it has a little bit of a radius on those edges to give it a realistic kind of look. So there's like half of a pincher, and I'll show you how to mirror stuff. But before we mirror things, let's go ahead and select this. So Maya's keeping all this information, all the steps we've taken to build this object. So let's say we don't want to keep that around because it makes your scene slower and it keeps all that stuff in memory. So the way you clean this up is you select your object, you go to edit, you want to go delete by type. Now here's a weird thing that Autodesk did when they made this, I feel like is a mistake, is there's delete all by type, which does everything in the scene, and delete by type, which only does what you have selected. Now you want to do the delete by type and not delete all by type, because that will delete the history on everything in your scene, and sometimes you don't want that. So do the first one, delete by type and history. Now watch over on the right side of the screen when I do this, delete by type history, all that goes away. Now this is just an object, there's no history there. Maya's not aware of any of the steps I've taken to build this. So Maya has a mirror feature, so let's give that a shot. So we could go to Mesh, Mirror.
I'm sorry?
And we could do, we want to see the axis we want to mirror across. So this line, we want to mirror across the YZ plane. So if I look at this, actually, let's pick, we're going to mirror across the Z axis. So we're going to pick Z, and we want to mirror from, this happens to be negative, we want to go positive. And so we'll do positive. Hey Robbie, how you doing? And let's go ahead and hit apply. So you can see it mirrored it in a positive direction. I'm going to undo that and explain again what's going on there. So just undo. All right, so I have my object selected, and I'm looking at this little indicator of the axis of my scene. You can see when I rotate the camera, this changes with the world. So the Z direction is kind of this left to right in this instance, and the positive, the Z is pointing to my screen right. So that means anything on the left side of this line is negative, and anything on the right side of this line is positive Z. So I want to take this pincher finger and mirror it in the positive directions on the Z. So that's why when I went to mesh and then mirror, I clicked on this little box to get the options. I picked Z as the axis to mirror across, and then I picked positive because I want to go from negative to positive. So I go apply, and I get my other half of the pincher there. So kind of just to do one more step here in this, let's try something different now. So let's go to the top view. So hit the space bar, and then hit the space bar in the top view to kind of maximize that. Zoom in a little bit. Let's build like the piece of geometry that would kind of hold these fingers together, let's say. So let's go to Mesh Tools, Create Polygon, and I'm going to just start clicking out a shape. And I'm kind of just going to make half of it because we'll mirror it over in a minute. So I'm going to hit enter. Let's adjust these points a little bit. Pretty good, man. And we're going to go to vertex. And so right click, went to vertex. So I'm just going to kind of position these in a better way. And if you want these to be right on the middle, sometimes let's say I created this and it's not exactly on this middle line, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror the shape over, and I want these middle points to be right on this middle line. If you hold down the X key, like hold it down and then click, it'll snap to these grid points. So I'm going to go ahead and snap that one to there, select this one, hold down X and snap this one here. And then once they're snapped, I could adjust them in this direction to get the shape I want. All right, so let's say I'm happy with that. We could go ahead and we have a bunch of edges on this one polygon, so we need to split this up. So the way I'm thinking we're going to split this up is let's right click and go to object mode, and let's go to mesh tools, multi-cut. I'll put my mouse over this point, click it, and then I'm just going to kind of click down to this edge where it turns red, and it doesn't matter exactly where I put it. I'm just going to kind of go somewhere in the middle here and click, and it goes from this point to this edge. Now I'm going to hit enter and hit like the move tool, which is W, to kind of exit that tool. So now I have these two faces. So now I can right click and go to object mode. Oops. And I could go back to perspective, put my mouse over perspective, tap the space bar. So let's extrude this piece out. So let's go ahead and do mesh extrude, edit mesh extrude. I'm going to go a little bit higher than that, and you can see we need to just pull these other faces down. So I'm just going to hit enter, or actually grab the move tool, and let's grab this face and this face. So when I grab two faces like that, I hold down shift. So if I click this one, hold down shift, I could select, see I have a plus sign next to my mouse. I could click this face, and now it's added to that selection, and I could pull this down a little bit. Maybe I'll pull these faces up a little bit. That looks pretty good. Cool. And we want to make like a hole, let's say, for this thing to fit into. So I'm going to grab this face, and let's go to edit mesh extrude, and instead of pulling out, let's hit the R button to get, or the R key to get the scale tool, and we could just pull this in a little bit. So now we have a face kind of roughly matching with that. We could even grab the move tool and maybe move this down a little bit so it kind of matches. And then we could hit the G key to extrude again, and then we could push this in to make like a little hole. Now we don't want to go super far, but far enough to create, it starts to go out the other side, but something like that's good. So now we have a hole for this thing to sit in. And then we can hit the W key to get out of that extrude tool. And then we need to insert some edges on here to support what we got going on. So let's let's hit save too. Let's do file, save scene as, and I'm getting carried away. Let's do call this pincher lesson. All right, cool. So now let's go right click, go to object mode, and we're gonna go to mesh tools, insert edge loop. And so you could imagine, let's click right here and kind of add an edge right there. Let's click, oops, I clicked in a weird spot. I'm just gonna hit undo. Grab that, insert edge loop again. I'm gonna click right here on this diagonal edge and kind of put one next to there. Let's put one kind of close to there. Let's click one here. Let's click one right there and one right there. We need one right there and one right, right there. And this looks, we need one right here. So I'm kind of just supporting all those edges. I'm not adding anything towards the middle because we don't need that. And then what we could do is we could do a mirror. So let's go and do that. So let's go to object mode, right click, go to object mode, grab your move tool or arrow tool, W or Q, select your object, kind of zoom out a little bit. So we want to mirror this again in the positive Z direction. So let's go to mesh and go to mirror, and we're going to do same settings. So and again, if you're not seeing these settings, if you go to mesh, instead of clicking mirror, click on this little box next to it, and that brings up the settings. We want to do Z, positive, and make sure that merge border vertices is turned on, so then when this does mirror it, since these will be touching, it'll weld those together. So let's hit apply. Cool, so now we have this, and we could do, let's delete the history on it. So we have all this history here, so let's go edit, I guess let's do a mesh smooth first. Let's do mesh and then do smooth, and maybe hit one more. So hit G again to do it. And then now we could select it. We could go to edit, delete by type, history, and all that history goes away, and we have our little piece of geometry here for our pincher. And if you wanted to make it look a little bit more realistic, I guess you could throw some cylinders. So like we could go to create, polygon primitives, cylinder. Again, right away, I'm just gonna not move this or do anything. I'm just going to right click and go to vertex. And I want to actually move the vertices instead of moving the object, because let me show you why. If I undo this, let's say I create a cylinder and I'm like, okay, I want to place this as like a rivet or something right there, or a hinge. You know, I could scale this down. I could do this type of thing with it, and I could move it into place, like right there, let's say. Obviously that's too big, but what happens is we end up with these values in our channel box, and these could get zeroed out by accident. So let's say if those get changed, now your model's messed up. So the correct way to do that after you make your cylinder is to right click, go to vertex, and if you select all the vertices, now you can move these vertices where you want them. You can scale them. You could put them into position and, you know, do your thing. Maybe that's not, oops, scale that again. Now if I go back to object mode, there's no values on that cylinder object. There's no way that I could mess this up and put these back to 0 and mess up my model. So you can see how that's kind of a cool thing. Now if I wanted to add some edge loops on this, I would just go to again, mesh tools, insert edge loop, and kind of, oops, throw one in there. Maybe, oops, didn't work on that. Let's do it over here. Doesn't seem to be working on this there, so that's fine. We could just go back to object mode. Oops. Click on our little cylinder and do a mesh smooth. There's our little rivet. And again, you can mirror across the Z. So this one, I actually made this one on the positive side. See, the Z is pointing this way. So on the right side of the screen here, this is positive Z. So if I go to mesh mirror, hit the options, I want to do negative Z this time. So I'm going to change this plus to a minus, hit apply. All right, so that's enough for this lesson. Take some of those concepts and try to model some of those custom parts, maybe the feet, maybe the pincher. You can make the rest of the pincher arm with some cylinders. You could insert some edge loops and then smooth them to round out the, you know, the surfaces. And yeah, and I look forward to seeing you guys in class. I think during the class it'll be more of like a lab time, so you guys can kind of work on your own, and I'll walk around and help you guys with these steps that you learned in this lesson. Thank you so much.